Welcome back. In this video, I want to get back to our coffee example. So we wanted to make coffee and I've gotten rid of all of the daisy code and the dog creation code. We still have the dog class and it's fine. We can still have it there. I'm just going to close it for now, but I want to focus on the coffee side of things. And that's why we even got to classes, right? We wanted to find a way to get the coffee details and then get them one by one per user, so to speak, and then pass them to this method or function, make coffee, that was supposed to then create the coffee for us, right? So how can we get our way around it? Now, we could obviously create a class called coffee details, or we could call it coffee, whatever we would prefer. But then we don't actually need all of the functionality of a class, as we saw with functions, properties, and so forth. Now, there is this other thing called a data class. So data classes in Kotlin are classes whose main purpose is to hold data. And now that's exactly what our class about coffee details is going to be. It's not supposed to execute anything. It's not supposed to create the coffee. It's not supposed to do anything. It's really just supposed to hold the coffee or maintain the coffee details. Okay, so they come automatically with additional member function that allow you to print an instance to readable output, compare instances, and more. Data classes are marked with data. So instead of just using the class keyword, we can use data class. And then we can have the properties of that class defined. And then as you see, it has some functions that we can use on top of it to string, for example, to give us details about that object. Then we can compare them to each other. We can copy that data class objects and so forth. So let's just go ahead and create one. Now, the thing is, I wasn't sure what the best approach is when it comes to data classes, whether you are supposed to create a separate file for data classes or you can use them in the same file in which you are going to use that data class. So in our case, in the basics.kt file, and I asked ChatGPT about it. And ChatGPT told me, and that's generally something that I highly recommend for you. If you are unsure about something, you can ask ChatGPT. Obviously, you should take the information with a grain of salt because it doesn't know everything, but I just asked it. So do you add data classes in the same class they are used in, or do you create a separate file for in Kotlin? So it says in Kotlin, both approaches are common and the choices often depend on the project structure, team preferences, and the specific use case. And then it gives me some advantages and disadvantages. So the advantage within the same file is if the data class is tightly coupled to another class and is not expected to be used elsewhere, keeping it in the same file can make the code more readable by providing context. So that basically means that if you only want to use objects of that data class and the data class in general in that one class, in that one context, and don't need it anywhere else in your program, then it's fine to have it in the same class. Otherwise, it would recommend it to put it into a separate file. So that's basically the information that I got from it. So we can just go ahead and create a data class here. Okay, so it's not going to be basics. I'm going to call this one coffee details. So we're going to have this data class, and this keeps it super short. We don't need to add all of this stuff. Don't need to create an extra class file. We don't need to create all of these initializers and all of that. We can just go ahead and create our details. So what are the details that we want to have about our coffee? So the properties, what are they? Well, it is, if we look back down and recall, it was the sugar count and it was the name. So let's just copy those from here. But we cannot forget that we want the name to also be a property. So that's why I add this val here. Now you can put it into separate lines so it's more readable. So for example, I can put it like this. So now it will be a little more readable what my data class is and what the properties of that data class are. Actually, I prefer to have the comma at the end, like so, then it's all in line. And then what else do we want to store about any given coffee detail? Or what are the details that we want to have about coffee? Well, the sugar count, the name of the person that we want to give it to. Then we want to have a size, which could be a string as well. For example, XL or L or XXL or M or S or whatever those sizes are. I personally would prefer milliliters, but not everyone goes with that. And then finally, we want to know the cream amount. So how much cream do we want to put in there? So that will be an integer. So that is already our data class. Now, basically, if we create an object of our data class, it's just going to be a very simplified object that only can contain data or information as properties, but doesn't execute any other code. Like, it doesn't need any of that. And that's exactly perfect for what we want to do. So now if we go ahead and create a new variable, so I'm going to call this one coffee for Dennis, that will be containing coffee details. So it will be an object of coffee details. And now we need to add all of these details in the order that we had them here. So the sugar count, let's say 0. I don't like any sugar in there. The name will be Dennis. And even with lower letters, it's okay. The size will be, I always drink a lot, XXL. And then finally, the cream amount will be 0. So I don't want to have any cream. So now you see, this is what my coffee details, so the details that I'm going to pass to that object are going to be. Now the crazy thing is, you can pass objects as parameters. So how can we do that? How can we pass coffee for Dennis to make coffee? Well, we need to define that the coffee details that we want to pass are going to be of type coffee details. So now we can pass coffee details directly to our make coffee function. So an object of type coffee details, such as, for example, coffee for Dennis is. So coffee for Dennis is of this type called coffee details. So by creating a class or a data class, both, we are creating a new type. So it's like creating our own type of string or our own int thing, right? So that's what we are doing by creating our own classes and data classes. So now you see we get a lot of errors because sugar count doesn't exist anymore. Well, we have the details about sugar count inside of our coffee details. So the variable that we're going to get passed is going to contain the sugar count. Because if we look at our coffee details class, this data class has the variable or the property called sugar count. So now we can use that information from the given coffee details object that will be passed. So here we are still in the function where we define everything. We don't actually pass anything in the function declaration. Now, while we're at the definition of our make coffee, let's go ahead and finalize that. So when we want to use the sugar count, we need to add curly brackets, as we've seen, right? So you might recall whenever we want to use string manipulation this way, we need to actually add the curly brackets. So here, this is the name, and I'm going to add coffee details.name. The same goes here for the, well, here also sugar count will be coffee details.sugar count, and no sugar. So here, curly brackets opening dot sugar count name, and finally here also dot sugar count, and then closing brackets. And now for the last line, I'm going to put that in here as well. We do the same thing. So what is happening here? Well, for me, it obviously all makes sense, but for you, maybe this is a little confusing still. But the thing is, we're basically saying coffee details contains all of the details that we want to have about our coffee. And now we are just accessing its properties. So we're accessing the values that were assigned to that object that we will pass to our function make coffee. So now that we have our make coffee function ready, let's go ahead and use it. But let's not use it in ask for coffee details, but instead, let me comment this out. Instead, let's use it directly inside of our main function. So here, I'm going to use, wait a second, it was not ask for coffee details, make coffee. Okay, so we're going to make the coffee, and by making coffee, we need to pass the coffee for Dennis details in there. So now what that will do is it will pass all of the details such as the sugar count, the name, as well as the size and the cream amount. We will pass this information into our make coffee function. So this one right here, and then it will execute everything that we have here. So it's going to execute the print line statement here, or this one, or that one, because it just knows how much sugar Dennis wants. And then it prints it out depending on this information. Now we can add additional information. So we can have how much cream it's gonna have. So here plus, let's say $, and let me actually put that into a separate line. So here it's going to be $, opening brackets, coffee details. Let's use cream amount here. Okay, it's just going to display the cream amount and cream colon like so. Now we can use that same thing for our other lines like this and like this. Even though there's a lot unnecessary text there. So let's rerun it. We don't need to change anything else. And we see coffee with no sugar for Dennis and cream 0. Yeah, so it wasn't clean that what I had here. It's way too many extra lines here, like so. If I rerun it now, and I just corrected for this one thing, and it says coffee with no sugar for Dennis and cream equals 0. Okay, so that is something that I wanted to show you about data classes. So that's how we can create a data class, and we saw how we can use data classes. And the difference between a data class and a normal class is basically that you can't define extra functions for that data class, but you can do that in a normal class.